Hi, class. All right, so today what I want to talk about is the lean startup method. This is based on a book written by Eric Ries. And the title of the book is The Lean Startup: How Today's Entrepreneurs Use Continuous Innovation to Create Radically Successful Businesses. And I want to take a little minute to talk about Eric Ries because he's a really interesting fellow. He started, the reason he saw a need for this book is he started a business and it failed. He started a company called Catalyst Recruiting, and it didn't succeed through lack of work. He worked really hard and he created a really great product. I think just in retrospect, it was that the strategy, the actual strategy of the company uh, wasn't quite as well thought out, or it wasn't at the right time. So his business failed. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, that is not the end of the story. He went again and started another company that was quite successful. It's a company called IMVU. And this company is really interesting. I would recommend just go ahead and type into Google IMVU and look up the company. I don't really understand it entirely. I've not used the product, but it's just looking at basically building avatars. And when he built IMVU, he basically broke all the rules, and he basically did everything wrong according to what he says. He says instead of spending years perfecting a technology, they built a minimum viable product, and the product, he admits, was terrible, full of bugs, and could crash your computer stability problems. But they still went ahead and tried it this way. And what they did is they secured initial customers, changed the product constantly. They changed the product a ton based on traditional standards. This is just like way too much change. And in fact, they would ship out versions, like basically through software updates, dozens of times, sometimes in a day. So, and this company seemed to work. And he had to kind of scratch his head and be like, well, this is really different than what he had been taught. And as a result, he started doing consulting work at the Harvard Business School, and he decided to write the book The Lean Startup. And the Lean Startup, basically, it's really interesting idea, and it borrows from other ideas and applies it to entrepreneurship. So it borrows from concepts from lean manufacturing, and it also borrows from, I think one of his mentors was Steve Blank. I think he was at Stanford, and Steve Blank had a customer development methodology. So these are kind of some of the concepts that go into creating the idea of the lean startup. Currently, Eric Ries is working on he's got approval to create a long-term stock exchange. So an alternative to like the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. It's another type of stock exchange that he's creating. So it'll be interesting to see what else new he comes up with. But getting back into the lean startup a little more, sad fact is most startups fail. But why is this? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. First off, it's just a really uncertain environment and it's a really difficult thing to do. But Eric Ries would argue that too many startups fail, and there should be a solution, that there could be a solution. And that solution basically is finding a balance between the old-fashioned way of doing things where you plan out every single aspect of your company and you manage it like a traditional organization. And a lot of businesses had tried that over the years in a startup and found it didn't work. And then they oscillated to the other extreme where people who were starting up businesses would be like, hey, you just got to go out and do it. And that just do it philosophy is great, but you don't want to just go and try something willy-nilly without some kind of plan. So it's really about finding a balancing between traditional management practices or over managing and just going out and trying something willy-nilly. And it's important to recognize that failure is part of the process, but you basically don't want to set up your company that you only have one shot at success. And to give you an idea, that's one shot at success would be like launching a spaceship. You don't want to invest all your money into this one chance. And like when you launch a spaceship, basically that's what you're doing. You have to plan everything out to every excruciating detail and wait a long time to plan. And when you finally launch the spaceship, it's a big day. And whether or not that's going to succeed is based on, that the spaceship's built correctly, that its entire flight path is planned out exactly, including the orbit that it's going to take and its trajectory where it comes back down to Earth. And creating a business shouldn't be like that. So don't overmanage. Don't get too much. I don't like to see business plans, although I know that lenders like to see this, but I don't like to see business plans that have too much detail in them. Because part of what the process of starting a business is to find those and secure those first customers and then learn from them, which we'll talk about more later. So rather than launching a spaceship, a lean startup should be more like driving a car. When you drive a car, you don't have a just do it philosophy unless you're just going to go out for a Sunday pleasure drive. You generally have an idea what direction you're going to head. And so basically, driving a car is a lot easier. You don't have to plan out as much, but you do have to know that the car is in good working order, and you kind of have to know where you're going. So moving on, I mentioned a little bit about Eric Ries and and his idea of the lean startup. There's kind of a science behind managing a startup, and that's what his book is based around. But I wanted to start first by defining what a startup is. Based on Eric Ries' definition, a startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Okay, well, the extreme uncertainty is the important aspect of it. Entrepreneurs have to be comfortable in uncertainty and thrive in that under those conditions. And part of that being able to thrive is to be able to accept that failure will be part of the process and realize that you will fail. So nobody likes to fail. In school, we're kind of taught failure's bad, but is it really? If you're an entrepreneur and you fail, if you can learn from that failure and create a better product, then you're able to go on and create something that's better for everyone. So what does a lean startup look like? Well, basically, a lean startup follows a process where it creates a minimal viable product. First, Eric Ries, that's what he did with IMVU. They created some really simple avatars to start out and found some early adopters to go ahead and buy that product. And he kind of basically experimented on his first initial customers, the early adopters. He solicited feedback from them. Now, he didn't cater to their every whim, but he did get feedback to find out what they liked and didn't like about that minimum viable product. And then inherent in that was a short cycle of improvement. So you're constantly improving your product. So change is a part of is like embedded into the DNA of a lean startup. So a lean startup, when you start a company, you're going to have a vision, and then you'll have a strategy, and then a product. Now your vision, that's why you do what you do. That's why you even bother. And your visions can vary dramatically. I mean, some people's vision is just to make a ton of money. Some people's vision is to create an incredible organization. Other people's visions are to change the world for the better. Your vision is what motivates you. And so basically, the more well thought out your vision is, and knowing exactly what you want to accomplish and how and the why, that's what's going to motivate you to become a successful entrepreneur. And that's having a strong vision is essential. The strategy and product, well, those can change quite a bit, and they really should in the process of the lean startup. The product, you're constantly tweaking the product, constantly making improvements. You may there's for instance, it can be anything from, like, for instance, I was talking about coffee. For instance, coffee, you might find a new way to roast it, or a new package, or a new name for the product. All of that can change. Where I get the product from could change. All that basically, you're constantly tweaking it. Vision probably won't change that much. The reason why you're doing it is kind of the reason why you're doing it. You may, as in the process of creating a startup, have more realizations of why you want to do that, but the vision kind of remains the same. Strategy, that can change, um, and you can make small adjustments to strategy, or you can do like what they talk about later in the book is pivot, where you basically completely change directions. Now, pivots can cost a lot of money. They can be big changes, and in the example of a spaceship, you can't really you you can't stop mid-flight in a spaceship and turn it around or pivot. It's too big of a thing going too fast in one direction. The same as would be like with an aircraft carrier. Like, it takes forever to turn an aircraft carrier around. Um, but if you build your products lean, like a car, for instance, is pretty lean. Let's imagine a little sports car. You can kind of stop on a dime and turn around and go in a different direction. You can go backwards. You can turn left, turn right. So your strategy can change quite a bit too. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about the lean startup. And there's quite a few learning things that you can learn from the lean startup, and from this book. So I'm encouraging you to take a look at this book when you have the time. It may be while class is going on, it may be after class, but I recommend getting a copy of this book and learning more about what it takes to have a minimum viable product, and the process around continuous improvement. And generally, and also the I think that another thing that's really important is the idea of embracing failure, and that you learn from the failure, and in the end you end up with a way better product, as long as you're committed to seeing that product improve, which goes back to having an incredible vision. Well, that's it for the lean startup. I hope you found this useful.